Stepping out of the car, Jasmine adjusted her tailored blazer, the epitome of elegance and professionalism. Her natural curls framed her face, and her confident stride exuded the kind of poise earned through years of relentless hard work. Little did the officer know, this encounter would turn his world upside down. But as she locked her car and walked toward the boutique, she felt a sharp gaze on her. "That's quite the car for someone like you," the words hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. Jasmine Mitchell looked up from her phone, her calm brown eyes meeting the piercing gaze of the uniformed man standing just feet away. His name tag read Carter, and the badge gleaming on his chest seemed to shine with the weight of authority and arrogance. Jasmine straightened, slipping her phone into her designer handbag. She was parked outside a boutique in an upscale neighborhood, her sleek black Lamborghini Aventador gleaming in the sunlight. Its lines were smooth and predatory, its growling engine a head-turner. Jasmine had worked tirelessly to earn it, but the man before her didn't see any of that. "Excuse me," she said, her tone even but pointed. Carter smirked, adjusting his belt. "I said that's quite the car for someone like you. You don't exactly look like you belong in this part of town driving that kind of vehicle." Jasmine's jaw tightened, but she remained calm. "I wasn't aware this neighborhood had a dress code or a preferred demographic for car ownership, officer." Carter's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Let's cut to the chase. Is this your vehicle?" Jasmine crossed her arms. "It is. Is there a problem?" The officer's eyes flicked to the Lamborghini, then back to Jasmine, as if he were daring her to prove herself. "I'm going to need to see some ID, registration, and proof of ownership. We've had reports of stolen vehicles in the area." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "And by stolen vehicles, you mean this one, or is this just a random check?" "It's procedure," Carter said, the smirk returning. "Now, if you've got nothing to hide, you won't mind complying." Suppressing the urge to roll her eyes, Jasmine reached into her handbag and retrieved a slim leather folder. She handed it to him without a word, watching as he opened it and began scanning the documents. Her name, Jasmine Mitchell, was printed in bold letters on the registration. Everything was in order, as she knew it would be, but Carter barely glanced at the papers before handing them back. "Forgery is not uncommon," he said dismissively. "Where'd you really get this car?" Jasmine's patience was wearing thin. She stepped closer, her voice calm but cutting. "I bought it brand new from a dealership. Would you like the receipt too? Or is this where you tell me it doesn't feel right for me to own it?" Carter's smirk widened, his confidence bolstered by her defiance. "Look, I don't want any trouble, ma'am, but this car is suspicious, and I'm going to have to impound it until we can verify its ownership." "You've got to be kidding me," Jasmine said, her voice low and dangerous. "Not kidding," Carter replied, his tone mocking. "Step aside, unless you'd like to escalate this further." Jasmine clenched her fists, forcing herself to remain composed. She had dealt with people like him before, men who saw her success as something to question, something to diminish. She knew better than to give him the satisfaction of an outburst. Instead, she took a step back, her heels clicking against the pavement. "You're making a mistake," she said evenly, "a big one." Carter only chuckled as he slid into the Lamborghini, the car roaring to life beneath him. He revved the engine as if to show off his newfound power before pulling out of the parking spot with a flourish. Stay tuned. Will Jasmine's plan bring this officer to his knees? Jasmine watched him drive off, her expression unreadable. Once the car disappeared around the corner, she reached into her handbag and pulled out her phone. She dialed a number and waited for the line to connect. "It's me," she said when the call was answered, her voice calm but her eyes burned with quiet fury. He took the bait. "Activate the failsafe." She hung up and stood for a moment, her heels planted firmly on the pavement. Then with a small, knowing smile, she turned and walked away. The game had just begun. The Lamborghini purred like a beast tamed under Carter's control, its engine growling softly as he navigated the pristine streets of the affluent district. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, a smug grin plastered across his face. The car was more than a vehicle to him, it was a trophy, proof of his perceived dominance. "These people think they can get away with anything," he muttered to himself, glancing at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The leather interior gleamed under the sunlight streaming through the windshield, and the faint scent of jasmine lingered. An ironic touch, he thought, considering the car's original owner. He pressed the accelerator, feeling the raw power of the Lamborghini surge through him. For a moment he indulged in a fleeting fantasy. This car is his own, cruising through the city, the envy of all who saw him. But the illusion was short-lived. A chime sounded from the dashboard, followed by a message flashing across the digital display. "Unauthorized user detected, activating security protocol." Carter frowned, tapping the screen as if it were a malfunction. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. The car slowed to a crawl on its own, the engine no longer responding to his commands. the steering wheel stiffened under his grip, and the dashboard lights blinked furiously. "Control override engaged," a smooth automated voice announced. The car made a sharp turn, veering off the main road and onto a side street. Carter's hands jerked on the wheel, trying to regain control, but it was as if the Lamborghini had a mind of its own. "Damn thing's rigged," he spat, fumbling for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter, I need assistance, vehicle malfunction." Before he could finish, the radio crackled with static, his transmission was cut off mid-sentence, leaving him in silence except for the hum of the car systems. Panic began to creep into his chest, a foreign sensation for someone so used to being in control. The car sped up again, but this time Carter wasn't the one driving. It weaved through traffic with precision, its movements deliberate, calculated. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he gripped the unresponsive steering wheel, the once smooth leather now slippery under his palms. "Stop the car," he shouted, as if commanding it would make a difference. The Lamborghini didn't stop, instead it took him farther away from the familiar streets, into an industrial area on the outskirts of the city. Warehouses loomed like silent sentinels, their shadows stretching across the cracked pavement. The car came to an abrupt halt in front of one of the larger buildings, its headlights cutting through the dim light of the setting sun. Carter tried the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The automated voice returned, calm and detached. "Remain seated, assistance is on the way." "Damn it!" Carter shouted, pounding on the window. His confidence had evaporated, replaced by a growing unease. He was trapped, and he didn't know by whom or what. The faint sound of footsteps reached his ears, growing louder as they approached the car. Carter squinted through the windshield, his heart pounding. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, their silhouettes sharp against the fading light. 2 were tall, broad-shouldered men in dark suits, their faces impassive. The third was smaller, but her presence was far more commanding. Jasmine. She walked with deliberate grace, her heels clicking against the pavement, echoing in the stillness. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with quiet intensity. She stopped a few feet from the car, tilting her head slightly as she regarded Carter through the windshield. "Open the door," she said, her voice steady. The car obeyed her command immediately. The locks clicked, and the door swung open. Carter stumbled out, his legs shaky, his composure shattered. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice higher than he intended. "You set me up." Jasmine raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint smile. "Did I, or did you simply make assumptions and walk right into your own trap?" Carter's face turned red, but before he could respond, one of the men in suits stepped forward. He held a sleek tablet in his hands, the screen displaying a live feed from the car's internal cameras. The sound of Carter's earlier smug remarks echoed from the speakers. "Probably stolen. These people always think they're above the law. Can't trust them with anything this expensive." Carter's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "That's not, I didn't mean to save it." Jasmine cut him off, her tone icy. "It's all recorded, Officer Carter, your words, your actions, everything, and it's not just today, I've been tracking you for months." The other man stepped forward, handing Jasmine a thick folder. She flipped it open, revealing copies of complaints filed against Carter: racial profiling, excessive use of force, falsified reports. Her voice was calm, but each word struck like a hammer. "You've been abusing your badge for years, targeting people who you think can't fight back, but you made a mistake today," she said, closing the folder with a snap. "You underestimated me." Carter took a step back, his hands raised offensively. "Look, I didn't mean anything by it. Let's talk this out. You don't need to involve anyone else." Jasmine's smile returned, sharp and unforgiving. "Oh, Carter, it's far too late for that." As the suited men flanked him, Carter realized the depth of his predicament. This wasn't just about a car anymore, this was about everything he thought he could get away with, and the reckoning that had finally caught up with him. The air inside the warehouse was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Carter's breaths came in short, shallow bursts as he was ushered inside by the 2 men in suits. Jasmine followed closely behind, her heels clicking sharply against the concrete floor, each step measured, deliberate, and inescapable. The cavernous space was stark, the dim light casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. A single metal table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs. On the table rested a sleek laptop, its screen glowing faintly. Carter's mind raced, each step he took feeling heavier than the last. He had always operated on the belief that he was untouchable, a predator prowling in the shadows of the system, but now, for the first time, he felt hunted. Jasmine gestured toward a chair. "Sit," she commanded, her voice calm yet unyielding. Carter hesitated, his pride wrestling with the mounting fear in his chest. One of the men stepped forward, his expression blank but his presence menacing. Reluctantly, Carter sat, his fingers twitching against his knees. Jasmine took the seat across from him, leaning forward slightly. "Do you know where you are, Officer Carter?" she asked, her tone casual, almost conversational. Carter shook his head, his throat dry. Some kind of warehouse, he muttered. What's the point of this? If you've got a problem, take it to my department. Jasmine's smile was cold, devoid of humor. Oh, I intend to, but first, you're going to sit here and listen, because today isn't just about what you did to me, it's about everything you've been doing for years. She tapped the laptop, and the screen lit up, displaying a grid of video thumbnails. Carter's eyes widened as he recognized himself in every clip, footage of him harassing drivers during traffic stops, roughing up young men in alleyways, pocketing cash from confiscated wallets. The sound of his own voice filled the air, cruel and dismissive, laced with prejudice. This is illegal. Carter barked, his voice cracking. You can't just record me without my knowledge. Jasmine tilted her head, her expression one of faint amusement. Funny, coming from someone who's tampered with dashcam footage and planted evidence. But no, this wasn't illegal. These are your own department's records, unredacted, unfiltered. It's amazing what you can find when you know where to look. Carter's jaw clenched. You can't prove anything. Can't I? Jasmine countered. She clicked another file, and a new video began to play. This one was recent, mere hours ago. It showed Carter stepping out of his cruiser, approaching the Lamborghini, and confiscating it without cause. His condescending remarks about Jasmine echoed in the vast space. That's entrapment, he shouted, the color draining from his face. No, Carter, Jasmine said sharply, her patience thinning. That's accountability, something you've spent your career avoiding. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Let me tell you what's going to happen next. I've already sent this footage, along with the rest of the evidence, to the district attorney. Your badge is as good as gone, and when the civil rights attorneys I've contacted are done with you, you'll be lucky to afford a used bicycle, let alone a Lamborghini. Carter slammed his fist on the table, the sound reverberating in the empty warehouse. You can't do this. I'll fight it. I have friends in the department, they won't let this stand. Jasmine's expression didn't waver. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope, sliding it across the table. Carter eyed it warily before picking it up. Inside were statements from other officers, his colleagues, his so-called friends, testimonies detailing his corruption, his abuse of power, and his attempts to coerce them into silence. They've already turned on you, Carter, Jasmine said, her voice soft but cutting. You see, bullies like you don't inspire loyalty. The moment you become a liability, you're expendable. Carter's hands shook as he leafed through the documents, his bravado crumbled, replaced by desperation. Please, he whispered, his eyes darting to Jasmine, there has to be another way. I'll quit, I'll leave the force, just don't ruin my life. Jasmine's eyes softened for a moment, but only for a moment. Ruin your life, she repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. Do you know how many lives you've ruined, how many people you've humiliated, hurt, or worse, just because you could? No, Carter, this isn't me ruining your life. This is you facing the consequences of your actions. Carter slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. The weight of his deeds bore down on him, crushing the illusion of invincibility he had clung to for so long. Jasmine stood, smoothing the fabric of her blazer. You'll be escorted out of here shortly, she said. Don't try to run, they'll find you, and when they do, it'll be even worse. As she walked toward the exit, Carter called out to her, his voice raw with desperation. Why are you doing this? Why go through all this trouble? Jasmine paused, her hand on the door. She turned back to him, her eyes fierce and unrelenting. Because people like you thrive on fear and silence, I refuse to be either. With that, she stepped into the cool night air, leaving Carter to face the cold reality of his actions. The warehouse door slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing like a final verdict. Carter sat in the cold, hollow silence of the warehouse, his body frozen in place. The weight of Jasmine's words hung in the air like a storm cloud, each passing second forcing him to confront the undeniable truth. His reign of unchecked authority was over. The two suited men loomed nearby, watching him with expressions of detached professionalism, their presence a silent reminder that he was no longer in control. The door opened again, and a new figure entered, a stern-looking man in a tailored suit. His hair was graying at the temples, and his sharp eyes swept the room before settling on Carter. He carried a briefcase, his demeanor exuding an aura of quiet power. Officer Carter, the man said, his tone clipped. My name is Marcus Langston. I represent the Federal Oversight Committee for Law Enforcement Misconduct. We've been following your activities for some time. Carter's heart sank further. The feds, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Marcus ignored his disbelief and placed the briefcase on the table, opening it with a decisive click. Inside were neatly organized files, each one labeled with Carter's name and badge number. You've been quite the case study for us, Marcus continued, his voice calm yet cutting. Abuse of power, racial profiling, misuse of department resources, the list is extensive. Carter's mouth went dry. I didn't mean for things to get out of hand, he stammered. Sometimes you just have to save it, Marcus interrupted, raising a hand. We're not here for excuses, we're here for accountability. The suited men stepped forward, flanking Carter as Marcus slid a piece of paper across the table. It was an official document, a notice of termination and a preliminary list of charges. Carter's eyes darted across the page, his hands trembling as he read the damning words. This is a joke, he muttered, shaking his head. You can't just ruin my career over this. Marcus leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Carter's. Ruining your career? You've done that yourself. What we're doing is ensuring you never have the opportunity to abuse your power again. Carter looked away, his mind racing. He had always considered himself untouchable, shielded by the badge and the system that enabled him, but now, faced with the cold, unflinching reality of his actions, he felt the walls closing in. Jasmine's voice echoed in his mind, "You underestimated me." Suddenly, one of the suited men's phones buzzed. He glanced at the screen before nodding to Marcus. "She's ready," he said simply. Marcus stood, closing his briefcase with a snap. "Bring him," he ordered. Carter was pulled to his feet, his protests falling on deaf ears as he was marched toward the exit. His legs felt like lead as he stumbled forward, his surroundings blurring together. When the warehouse doors opened, the night air hit him like a slap, cool and unforgiving. Waiting outside was Jasmine, her posture relaxed but her presence commanding. Behind her, several sleek black SUVs were parked, their engines idling. A small group of people stood nearby: reporters, legal representatives, and what looked like community advocates. The sight of cameras made Carter's blood run cold. "This isn't happening," he muttered under his breath. "You can't do this to me." Jasmine turned at the sound of his voice, her expression unreadable. "Oh, this is happening, Carter," she said, her tone sharp and precise. "This is what justice looks like." Marcus stepped forward, addressing the gathered group. "As of this evening, Officer Carter has been removed from duty pending a formal investigation. He will face charges for his actions, and we are committed to ensuring accountability within law enforcement." The cameras flashed, capturing every moment of Carter's humiliation. He tried to shield his face, but the suited men held him firmly in place. The murmur of voices around him was deafening, each word a dagger to his pride. Jasmine stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "You thought you could take from me without consequence," she said softly, her words carrying an edge of steel. "You thought you were above the law, but tonight, you'll learn what it feels like to answer for your actions." Carter's voice cracked as he pleaded, "Please, Jasmine, I was wrong, okay? I made a mistake, just don't let it end like this." Jasmine studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned in, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "It doesn't end here, Carter, this is just the beginning." She stepped back, signaling to the suited men. They led Carter toward one of the waiting SUVs, his protests growing more frantic as he realized there was no escape. The door slammed shut behind him, muffling his voice. Jasmine watched as the convoy pulled away, her shoulders relaxing slightly. The night was still and quiet once more, the weight of the moment sinking in. She knew this was only one step in a long fight, but it was a step forward, a victory for herself and for those who had suffered at the hands of people like Carter. With a deep breath, she turned and walked away, the sound of her heels fading into the night. The Lamborghini waited nearby, its sleek form glowing under the streetlights. Jasmine climbed into the driver's seat, the familiar hum of the engine grounding her as she drove away. The city stretched out before her, vast and unpredictable, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that justice had been served. The city lights blurred into streaks of amber and white as Jasmine drove her Lamborghini through the quiet streets. The powerful engine hummed beneath her, but her mind was far from the smooth mechanics of the car. She had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Tonight was about more than Carter. It was about exposing the rot within the system that allowed men like him to thrive unchecked. Her phone vibrated softly in the console. She pressed a button on the dashboard, and the call connected. A familiar voice filled the car. "Jasmine," said Marcus Langston, his tone even but tinged with urgency. "Carter's arrest is trending internally across law enforcement agencies. You've shaken up more than just his precinct." "Good," Jasmine replied, her voice calm but firm. "This needs to go deeper. Marcus, Carter's just one of many. We need systemic change, not just individual accountability." "There's already resistance," Marcus admitted. "A few high-ranking officials are pushing back. They're claiming you entrapped him, that your actions were vindictive." Jasmine smirked, her grip tightening on the steering wheel. "Let them spin their narratives. The evidence is ironclad, and if they want to challenge me, they're welcome to try." Marcus hesitated for a moment. "You know this puts a target on your back, right? You're making powerful enemies."
I've dealt with worse, Jasmine said simply. Keep me updated.
She ended the call, her thoughts racing, her determination burned brighter than ever, but a small part of her couldn't ignore the weight of the fight ahead. The system she was taking on was massive, tangled in layers of corruption and indifference. Carter was only a symptom of a much larger disease. The Lamborghini turned onto a quiet street lined with brownstones. Jasmine parked in front of a modest yet elegant home, its warm lights glowing through the windows. As she stepped inside, the faint scent of lavender greeted her, a welcome contrast to the cold tension of the night. Jasmine, a voice called from the living room. Her younger sister Nia appeared, wearing a sweatshirt and holding a steaming mug of tea. Her wide eyes immediately filled with concern. Are you okay?
I saw the news.
I'm fine, Jasmine assured her, shrugging off her blazer. She sank into the couch, the cushion swallowing her exhaustion. It went as expected.
Nia sat beside her, studying her face. And Carter?
Jasmine's lips pressed into a thin line. He's facing charges, but it's not just about him, Nia, it's about everyone like him, the people who think their power puts them above the law. Nia nodded slowly, her fingers tightening around the mug. You're doing something incredible, Jas, but it's dangerous. These people don't like being challenged. Jasmine reached over, squeezing her sister's hand. I know, but someone has to do it, and I'm not afraid. Their conversation was interrupted by another vibration from Jasmine's phone. This time it was a text message. She unlocked the screen and read the brief but startling words. We need to meet, urgent, your office, midnight. The message was from a trusted ally, Detective Laura Bennett, an undercover investigator who had been feeding Jasmine information for months. Laura's name appearing at this hour could only mean one thing: there was more to uncover. At exactly midnight, Jasmine stepped into her office, a sleek, modern space in a downtown building. The city skyline loomed outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights twinkling like distant stars. Detective Bennett was already waiting, her expression grim.
Laura, Jasmine greeted, closing the door behind her. What's going on?
Laura handed her a manila folder, her jaw tight. I dug deeper into Carter's network. He's connected to something much bigger, a ring of officers who've been covering for each other for years, false arrests, fabricated evidence, even bribes to keep cases from reaching court. Jasmine's stomach tightened as she flipped through the folder. Names, dates, transactions, all meticulously documented. This is staggering, she murmured. How has this gone unnoticed for so long? They're protected, Laura said bitterly, from the top down, high-ranking officials, wealthy benefactors. They built a fortress around themselves.
Jasmine's eyes hardened, and now that fortress is going to crumble.
Laura hesitated, then leaned closer. There's more. They know about you, Jasmine, your role in Carter's downfall, and they're not happy. I expected that, Jasmine said, unfazed. Let them come, I have the truth on my side.
You don't understand, Laura said urgently. These people don't play fair, they don't care about laws or ethics. They'll come after you, your family, anyone they think they can use to silence you. Jasmine's breath hitched for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. That's why we have to move fast. The more light we shine on this, the harder it'll be for them to operate in the shadows. Laura nodded reluctantly. I'll keep digging, but be careful, Jasmine, you're walking a dangerous line. I always have, Jasmine replied with a faint smile, but I'm not stopping now. The rest of the night passed in a blur of strategy sessions and phone calls. By dawn, Jasmine stood on her balcony, watching the city wake up. The first rays of sunlight painted the horizon, a reminder that even the longest night gave way to a new day. As she sipped her coffee, her phone buzzed again. Another text, this one from an unknown number. We're watching you, back off, or you'll regret it. Jasmine stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it. She set the phone down and turned back to the rising sun, her resolve stronger than ever. They wanted her to be afraid, but fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. The fight was just beginning. The morning air was crisp, the sunlight deceptively warm against the chill. Jasmine felt as she drove to her next destination. The Lamborghini, a symbol of her resilience, now felt like a beacon drawing unwanted attention. The text from the unknown number lingered in her mind like a splinter, sharp and unrelenting. She had grown accustomed to veiled threats over the years, but this one felt different, closer, more personal. Her destination was a courthouse downtown. Today she had a meeting with a group of civil rights attorneys who had taken an interest in her fight. The goal was clear: to turn Carter's case into a broader investigation, one that could crack open the fortress Laura had described. As she pulled into the parking lot, Jasmine noticed a black SUV idling near the entrance. Its tinted windows reflected the sun, making it impossible to see inside. Her instincts prickled, but she kept her composure. If someone wanted her to know she was being watched, she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. Inside the courthouse conference room,
Jasmine was greeted by familiar faces: Margaret Dillard, a seasoned attorney with a reputation for dismantling systemic corruption; Isaac Green, a younger lawyer known for his fiery rhetoric in court; and Sarah Patel, a meticulous strategist with a knack for anticipating her opponent's every move. Margaret began the meeting, her voice steady and commanding. "Jasmine, the evidence you've provided is enough to start a formal inquiry. We can push for a special prosecutor to handle this, bypassing the local system entirely." Isaac leaned forward, his enthusiasm palpable. "This could be huge, Jasmine. Carter's case is just the tip of the iceberg. If we can expose the network protecting him, it'll send shock waves through the entire department." Sarah, however, was more cautious. "It's not going to be easy. The people we're targeting have resources and connections. They won't go down without a fight." Jasmine nodded, her expression resolute. "I'm prepared for that. The question is, are we ready to strike now, or do we need more time?" Margaret exchanged a glance with Sarah before responding. "We need to build a public narrative first. If this goes straight to court without public support, the system could bury it. We'll need whistleblowers, more victims willing to come forward, and media pressure." "I can help with the whistleblowers," Jasmine said. "I've already connected with a few officers who've been looking for a way out of the system. They're scared, but if we can guarantee them protection, they'll talk." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "And what about the threats?" "You've already put yourself in the spotlight, Jasmine. If they escalate, I'll handle it." Jasmine interrupted, her voice sharp. "This isn't just about me, it's about every person who's been silenced or targeted. I'm not backing down." The meeting ended with a clear plan: build the case, gather allies, and prepare for a coordinated strike. As Jasmine walked back to her car, her mind buzzed with strategies and contingencies, but as she reached the parking lot, a chill ran down her spine. The black SUV was gone, replaced by an unmarked white sedan parked conspicuously close to her Lamborghini. A man leaned against it, his arms crossed, wearing sunglasses and a smug smirk. His stance was casual, but Jasmine could feel the tension radiating from him. "Miss Mitchell," the man called as she approached her car, his voice smooth, almost friendly, but it carried an undercurrent of menace. "You're making quite a name for yourself." Jasmine stopped a few feet away, keeping her expression neutral. "Can I help you?" He straightened, taking a step closer. "I represent some concerned parties, people who think you might be overstepping." "Is that so?" Jasmine said, her tone icy. "And who are these concerned parties?" The man chuckled, shaking his head. "Names aren't important. What matters is that you understand the risks. You're digging into things that don't concern you, and people are getting nervous." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Corruption and abuse concern everyone. If that makes people nervous, they should be." The man's smirk faded, replaced by a cold, hard glare. "This is your only warning, Miss Mitchell. Walk away, or you'll regret it." Jasmine stepped closer, her voice steady and cutting. "Let me make something clear. I don't scare easily. If you or your concerned parties think threats will stop me, you don't know who you're dealing with." For a moment, the man seemed taken aback by her defiance, but he quickly recovered his smirk. "Suit yourself," he said, backing away, "but don't say we didn't warn you." Jasmine watched as he climbed into the white sedan and drove off, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshaken. This encounter only confirmed what she already knew: she was up against powerful forces, but she wouldn't let them intimidate her. That night, Jasmine worked late in her office, reviewing documents and piecing together the larger puzzle. The text threats and the parking lot encounter played on a loop in her mind, but she channeled the unease into focus. A knock at her door startled her, and she looked up to see Detective Laura Bennett, her face pale, her expression tense. "Jasmine," Laura said urgently, closing the door behind her, "we've got a problem." "What is it?" Jasmine asked, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "Carter's been talking," Laura said. "He's naming names, giving up his connections, but the people he's implicating are retaliating. There's chatter about taking drastic measures to shut this down." Jasmine leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. "What kind of measures?" Laura hesitated, then said, "They're targeting your family." Jasmine's stomach dropped, but she masked her fear with a steely resolve. "Then we move faster," she said. "We hit them before they have the chance." Laura nodded, but her eyes were filled with worry. "Be careful, Jasmine, this fight is getting uglier by the minute." Jasmine stood, her hands gripping the edge of her desk. "Let them come," she said firmly. "They don't know who they're dealing with." The room fell silent, the weight of the battle ahead pressing down on both women, but Jasmine's resolve burned brighter than ever. This was no longer just a fight for justice, it was personal, and she wasn't about to lose. The stillness of the night cloaked Jasmine's home as she parked the Lamborghini in her garage. The driveway lights flickered briefly, a subtle anomaly that went unnoticed in her tired state. Stepping inside, she locked the door behind her, her fingers lingering on the deadbolt for a moment longer than usual. Something felt off, though she couldn't place it. The house was quiet, save for the faint ticking of a clock in the hallway. Jasmine's sister Nia was likely asleep upstairs. Despite the looming threats, Jasmine had decided not to share the full extent of the danger with her family. She told herself it was to protect them, though part of her knew it was also to keep them from worrying or trying to stop her. She placed her keys on the counter, poured herself a glass of water, and sat at the dining table, her laptop glowing softly in the dim room. The files Laura had brought earlier lay spread out before her, a damning tapestry of names, dates, and crimes, each connection traced back to a larger web of corruption that spanned far beyond Carter. Jasmine's heart raced as she uncovered more. Prominent business owners, district attorneys, even judges were implicated, but as she stared at the screen, her instincts whispered again, louder this time. She glanced around, her eyes sweeping the room. It was too quiet, the kind of silence that held its breath. Then she saw it, a faint glint on the kitchen counter, a reflection that didn't belong. Jasmine's breath hitched, her hand slid slowly toward her phone, but before she could reach it, a voice shattered the silence. Looking for this? She froze. The voice came from behind her, cold and unfamiliar. She turned slowly, her pulse pounding in her ears. A man stepped out of the shadows, dressed in dark clothing. His face was partially obscured by a baseball cap, but the menace in his eyes was unmistakable. He held her phone, dangling it mockingly before slipping it into his pocket. You've been busy, Miss Mitchell, too busy. Jasmine's mind raced, weighing her options. Her calm demeanor remained intact even as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Breaking into my home, that's bold, she said evenly, masking the fear building in her chest. The man smirked. You've been warned, but you didn't listen. Now we have to make it clear, this ends tonight. Before Jasmine could respond, another figure emerged from the hallway, his frame blocking the path to the stairs. Her heart sank. Nia, where is she? Jasmine demanded, her voice sharp. The second man chuckled. Relax, she's fine, sleeping, I assume, for her sake. Let's keep it that way. Jasmine clenched her fists, her gaze darting between them. What do you want? The first man leaned closer, his tone laced with menace. We want you to back off, drop the investigation, destroy the files, and disappear. Do that and this can all end peacefully. Jasmine's jaw tightened. And if I don't? The man's smirk widened. Let's just say you won't like the alternative. Jasmine held his gaze, refusing to let her fear show. You think threats will stop me? You've already lost, the evidence is out there. Even if something happens to me, the truth won't go away. For the first time, the man's smirk faltered. He glanced at his partner, who shifted uneasily. Jasmine seized the moment. You've made one mistake, she continued, her voice steady. You came here thinking you'd scare me into submission, but all you've done is prove how desperate you are. The man snarled, stepping closer. You think you're untouchable? Let's see how untouchable you feel. When a sudden crash interrupted him, the sound came from upstairs, followed by a muffled shout. Both intruders whipped their heads toward the noise, their confidence wavering. Jasmine's heart leapt as she realized what had happened. Nia was awake. The second man moved toward the stairs, but before he could take a step, a blinding beam of light flooded the room. A booming voice followed. Freeze, hands where we can see them. Chaos erupted as two armed agents burst through the front door, their weapons trained on the intruders. The men hesitated, their bravado crumbling under the weight of the agents' authority. Jasmine didn't flinch. She stood rooted as the scene unfolded, her relief mingling with determination. Laura Bennett emerged behind the agents, her badge flashing in the light. I told you to be careful, she said, her tone half scolding, half relieved. The intruders were quickly subdued, their hands cuffed behind their backs. One of them sneered at Jasmine as he was dragged away. You think this changes anything? He spat. You don't know who you're dealing with. Jasmine stepped closer, her voice calm but laced with steel. Neither do you. Later that night, after the agents had cleared the house and Nia was safely asleep, Jasmine sat with Laura in the living room. The tension in the air was palpable, but Jasmine's resolve remained unshaken. They're escalating, Laura said, handing Jasmine a cup of tea. We can't ignore how far they're willing to go. Jasmine nodded, her expression thoughtful. Good, let them escalate. The more desperate they get, the more mistakes they'll make. Laura studied her, a mixture of admiration and concern in her eyes. You can't do this alone, Jasmine. Let us help you. Let me help you. Jasmine met her gaze, her voice soft but firm. You already are, and we're not stopping until every one of them is held accountable. The room fell silent as they both stared out the window, the city lights stretching endlessly into the night. The battle was far from over, but Jasmine knew one thing for certain. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been silenced, for every voice that had been ignored, and she would not back down. The next morning, the city bustled as if nothing extraordinary had happened the night before, but Jasmine's world had irrevocably shifted. Her home, once a haven, now felt exposed, vulnerable. Despite Laura's reassurances that the intruders were in custody, Jasmine knew this wasn't the end. If anything, it was proof she had hit a nerve, and that meant it was time to escalate her own plans. She sat at the breakfast table, her laptop open as Nia stirred oatmeal on the stove. The younger woman moved with deliberate calm, but Jasmine could see the tension in her sister's shoulders. "You don't have to act brave for me," Jasmine said softly, her eyes still on the screen. Nia turned, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. "I'm not acting brave, she hesitated, gripping the spoon tightly. "I just don't want them to think they can scare us into hiding." Jasmine looked up, her heart swelling with pride and worry. "They won't," she said firmly, "we won't let them." Later that day, Jasmine met with her legal team in a secure conference room at a downtown law firm. The atmosphere was tense but electric. The recent threats had only fueled their determination. Margaret Dillard began the meeting, spreading out documents across the polished table. "We filed the motion for a special prosecutor," she said. "The district attorney's office is already under pressure to step aside. The evidence is damning enough that they can't ignore us." Isaac Green leaned forward, his hands clasped. "We've also secured statements from 3 more whistleblowers inside the department. They're ready to testify under anonymity for now, but it's a huge step." Jasmine nodded, her mind already working through the next steps. "What about public exposure? We need to control the narrative before they spin it against us." Sarah Patel, ever the strategist, tapped her pen against the table. "That's where it gets tricky. We can't rely on traditional media, too many potential leaks and biases. We need to go directly to the public." "How?" Jasmine asked. Sarah pulled out a tablet, displaying a draft of a documentary-style video. It outlined the corruption within the police department, using declassified evidence and anonymized testimonies. "This," she said, "we launch it as part of a grassroots campaign. If we can get this in front of the right people, civil rights organizations, community leaders, it'll spread like wildfire." Jasmine studied the draft, her expression thoughtful. "This could work," she said, "but we need to be prepared for the backlash. They won't take this lying down." "They already aren't," Margaret said grimly. "The threats against you are escalating. We need to talk about your safety." That evening, Jasmine met with Laura and a team of private security personnel in her office. The room was dimly lit, the blinds drawn tight. A large map of the city was spread out on the table, dotted with red and blue markers indicating potential safe zones and high-risk areas. "This is overkill," Jasmine said, eyeing the detailed plan. "I'm not running from this fight." Laura crossed her arms, her expression firm. "This isn't running, Jasmine, this is survival. We can't fight back if you're dead." The lead security agent, a tall man named Victor, stepped forward. "Miss Mitchell, we're not here to stop you, we're here to make sure you can keep fighting. Let us do our job." Jasmine sighed, the weight of their concern pressing against her pride. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but I'm not hiding. I still have meetings, appearances, we'll be with you every step of the way," Victor assured her. The following days were a blur of action. The documentary was finalized and released to key civil rights organizations, who amplified its reach. Jasmine's story, intertwined with the broader corruption she was exposing, became a rallying cry for justice. But the retaliation was swift. Anonymous calls flooded her office, her email was bombarded with threats, and shadowy figures appeared near her home and office, watching from a distance. Each new development tightened the noose around Jasmine's fight, but it also galvanized her supporters. One evening, as Jasmine prepared to leave her office, she received a call from Margaret. The attorney's voice was urgent. "Jasmine, we've got a problem." "What is it?" Jasmine asked, her pulse quickening. "There's been a leak," Margaret said. "Someone from the inside is feeding information to the people we're targeting. They know about the whistleblowers, one of them has already gone silent." Jasmine's stomach dropped. "Are they safe?" "We don't know," Margaret admitted. "We're trying to reach them. But Jasmine, we need to act fast." Jasmine clenched her jaw. "Then we escalate, push everything forward, no more waiting." That night, Jasmine convened with her team in a secure location. The mood was somber but resolute. Laura stood at the head of the table, a map of the city projected behind her. "We have enough evidence to force their hand," Laura said, "but if we're going to do this, we need to be ready for the fallout." Jasmine met her gaze. "We've been ready." The next phase of their plan was bold, a coordinated press conference that would unveil the full extent of the corruption, backed by whistleblower testimonies and irrefutable evidence. It would be a public declaration of war against the entrenched powers Jasmine was fighting. As the meeting concluded, Jasmine lingered in the room, staring at the map. The weight of the fight bore down on her, but she refused to waver.
Laura approached her, her voice quiet. You've got a lot riding on this, Jasmine, are you sure you're ready? Jasmine turned, her eyes blazing with determination. Ready or not, this ends on my terms. She walked out into the night, the city sprawling before her like a battlefield. The next move was hers, and she would make it count. The next morning, Jasmine sat in her office, a heavy silence surrounding her. The sunlight filtering through the blinds did little to warm the weight of the decisions ahead. The fight against corruption had taken a darker turn with the previous night's intrusion into her home. Despite the added security measures, the reality of the danger she faced loomed large. A sharp knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Laura entered, her face grim, carrying a thick envelope. She set it on the desk in front of Jasmine and folded her arms. What's this? Jasmine asked, gesturing to the envelope. Trouble, Laura replied, her tone clipped. One of the whistleblowers was taken into custody last night. Officially it's for unrelated charges, but we both know it's retaliation. Jasmine picked up the envelope and sifted through the contents. Arrest records, falsified documents, and a timeline that didn't add up. They're trying to discredit us, she said, her voice low but steady, to scare everyone into silence. It gets worse, Laura continued, pulling out her phone. I received this an hour ago. She handed the phone to Jasmine, who stared at the screen. It was a blurry photo of Nia, taken from a distance. The accompanying message read, "You're running out of time, walk away, or she pays the price." Jasmine's grip tightened on the phone, her jaw clenching. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to think clearly. Have you spoken to the security team? They're on it, Laura assured her. Nia's under constant surveillance. But Jasmine, this is escalating faster than we anticipated. We need to take a step back. Jasmine shook her head. If we step back now, they win. They'll keep doing this to us, to others. We can't let fear stop us. Laura sat down across from her, her voice softening. I get it, but you're not invincible. They're not just trying to stop you, they're trying to break you. Jasmine met Laura's gaze, her expression resolute. Then let them try. I didn't come this far to quit. That afternoon, Jasmine and Laura met with Margaret and the rest of their team in a secure location. The tension in the room was palpable as they reviewed the latest developments. They're tightening their grip, Margaret said, pacing. The whistleblower's arrest is a message, plain and simple. They're making it clear what happens to anyone who challenges them. We need to act, Isaac added, his frustration evident. If we wait any longer, they'll pick us off one by one. Jasmine stood, her voice cutting through the room. Then we move now. We have the evidence, we have the whistleblowers, and we have the law on our side. It's time to bring this to light. Margaret stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. You realize what that means, right? Once we act, there's no turning back. Jasmine nodded. I know, and I'm ready. Late that evening, Jasmine returned home. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. She checked on Nia, who was fast asleep. Before heading to her study, her security detail patrolled the perimeter, their presence both comforting and unnerving. As she settled into her chair, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Her instincts told her not to answer, but curiosity won out. This is Jasmine, she said cautiously. A familiar voice responded, dripping with arrogance. Miss Mitchell, I've been trying to reach you. It was one of the men from the warehouse encounter, his tone mocking. Jasmine's grip on the phone tightened. What do you want? To help you see reason, he said. You've made quite a mess for yourself, but it's not too late to walk away, destroy the evidence, and this all goes away. Jasmine's voice was ice. You're wasting your time, I'm not backing down. The man laughed, the sound cold and hollow. You think you're untouchable, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you, Jasmine shot back. If you're smart, you'll take your threats and disappear, because I promise you, if you come at me again, I'll make sure you regret it. The man's tone darkened. You're making a mistake, Miss Mitchell, and when the time comes, I hope you remember this conversation. The line went dead. Jasmine set the phone down, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshaken. She knew the threats were growing, but she also knew she couldn't afford to falter. This fight wasn't just about justice, it was about survival, for herself, for Nia, and for everyone who had suffered under the weight of a corrupt system. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the files spread across her desk. The pieces were all there, waiting to be assembled into a force that couldn't be ignored. Jasmine's mind raced with strategies, each one sharper and more precise than the last. The battle wasn't over, but tonight, Jasmine felt the tide begin to shift, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The next evening, Jasmine sat in her study, reviewing the final details of their plan. The evidence was ready, and the whistleblowers were prepared to testify under protection. Laura had ensured Nia's safety, relocating her to a secure location for the time being. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate,
but Jasmine couldn't shake the tension thrumming under her skin. The threats had grown more personal, and the enemies she faced were no longer hiding in the shadows. They were bold, confident in their ability to crush anyone who challenged them. Jasmine knew that tonight could be pivotal, not just for her fight, but for her life. A knock at the door broke her concentration. She looked up to see Laura entering, her expression serious. Behind her, Victor, the head of Jasmine's security team, followed with a grim look on his face. "We've intercepted a credible threat," Victor said without preamble. "A team of enforcers has been dispatched to eliminate you. They're professionals, not the thugs from last night." "How long do we have?" Jasmine asked, her voice steady despite the dread creeping into her chest. "Not long," Victor admitted. "They're targeting this location. We need to move you now." Jasmine shook her head. "If I leave, they'll think they've won. I won't run." Laura stepped forward, her voice firm but pleading. "This isn't running, Jasmine, this is survival. We can't fight back if you're dead." Jasmine considered their words, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but we do this on my terms. If they're coming for me, we'll be ready." The team sprang into action, turning Jasmine's home into a fortress. Security cameras monitored every angle, and armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Laura stayed close to Jasmine, her gun holstered but ready. Victor coordinated the defenses, his voice calm and authoritative as he directed his team. The hours ticked by, the tension growing with each passing minute. Jasmine paced the study, her mind racing. She felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her, but she refused to let fear cloud her judgment. Then it happened, a faint sound, a car engine, barely audible, cut through the silence. Victor's voice crackled over the intercom. "They're here." Jasmine stood by the study door as Victor and his team moved to intercept the intruders. The first wave came quickly, 3 men in dark clothing, armed and moving with precision, but Victor's team was ready. Gunfire erupted outside, the sharp cracks echoing through the house. Laura positioned herself near Jasmine, her stance protective. "Stay behind me," she ordered. Jasmine nodded, her adrenaline spiking as the sounds of the confrontation grew closer. Through the chaos, she caught glimpses of the attackers, men who moved like ghosts, their faces obscured by masks, but Victor's team held their ground, repelling the intruders with calculated efficiency. Suddenly, the power cut out, the house plunged into darkness, the hum of electricity replaced by an oppressive silence. Jasmine's breath hitched, but Laura remained calm, activating a flashlight mounted on her weapon. "They're trying to disorient us," Laura said, her voice low. "Stay close." The darkness seemed to stretch endlessly, amplifying every sound. Footsteps thudded upstairs, followed by a crash. The attackers were inside. Victor's voice came through a handheld radio. "They've breached the second floor, we're engaging." Jasmine gripped Laura's arm, her voice trembling with anger. "Not fear, we end this tonight." The next few minutes were a blur of movement and noise. Laura led Jasmine through the house, navigating toward a secure room, but as they reached the hallway, a figure emerged from the shadows, gun raised. Laura reacted instantly, firing 2 precise shots. The figure crumpled to the ground, their weapon clattering away. Jasmine's heart pounded as she stepped over the body, her resolve hardening. They reached the secure room and locked themselves inside. Victor's voice crackled over the radio again. "We've pushed them back outside, hold your position." Jasmine paced the room, her anger boiling over. "They think they can stare me into submission," she muttered, "but they're wrong." Laura glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You've got more fight in you than anyone I've ever met." Jasmine stopped pacing and met Laura's gaze. "This isn't just about me, it's about all of us, and if they want a fight, they'll get one." The battle outside raged on, but Victor's team slowly gained the upper hand. The attackers, realizing they were outmatched, began to retreat. One by one, they disappeared into the night, their assault broken. Victor entered the secure room, his face grim but triumphant. "They're gone for now." Jasmine exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Victor nodded. "We've sent a message tonight, they won't come back so easily." As dawn broke, Jasmine stood by the window, watching the sunrise. The house was quiet again, the remnants of the battle a stark reminder of the fight she had chosen. Laura joined her, leaning against the wall. "You did it," Laura said softly, "you stood your ground." Jasmine turned to her, her expression resolute. "This isn't over, but we've shown them that we won't back down." Laura nodded. "One battle at a time." Jasmine smiled faintly, her gaze returning to the horizon. She knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but she also knew she wasn't alone. The fight for justice was far from over, but for the first time, she felt the momentum shifting in her favor. Tune in to Dark Stories for more gripping tales of justice and resilience.